Bert! Get him! Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, how's it going out there? It is the 30th of July, at least as I record this. I don't know when you're listening to it. I sometimes struggle, and I know you guys struggle to listen to this intro sometimes, but I also know on first-hand account from all the people that come by, let's say the booth at Pheasant Fest, either they're polite enough to say it or they're being honest. They're like, no, Ron, I actually don't mind the long intros because for 10 and a half years, I've recorded each one of these individual. And I think maybe once I used the intro from the week before because I had to have somebody load up a podcast for me and I was gone. And it's what am I going to do to tell you, like, all right, Ron's going to talk about the title sponsor of this show, On X, the title sponsor. Title sponsor of everything we do. We know that. I know that. I'm thinking, what do they all have in common, these sponsors? So I used ChatGPT, and it came up with one word, reliable. I'm like, yeah, reliable, but it sounds like old reliable, like a good old car or a neighbor who's always got the toolbox that you need something from. But no, reliable, here's a description from Oxford Dictionary. Reliable, consistently good in quality or performance and able to be trusted. Well, if that doesn't surmise the lineup of these sponsors, Onyx Hunt, the title sponsor of the show, Gunner Kennels, DU Supply, Garmin, doesn't the word reliable just come off the back of them? Canine Athlete, Wilderness Athlete, Mossberg Shotguns, reliable for 100 years, Boss Shot Shells, Purina Pro Plan, just nothing more reliable, Marshwear, Arxis USA rubber boots. Everything on this list in front of me fits the description of reliable, consistently good in quality or performance, able to be trusted. There's one more thing that's just as reliable, and that's my beer sponsor, Watermark Brewery. I just went down last week and picked up a half a barrel. It's actually a full barrel, but it's really a half of Shark Bite. Now, I came close one time in Florida. I was down looking for seashells with my kids when they were little. And a bull shark, I was in a little reef. I was in about 3.5, 4 feet of water. And I came face to face. I'm not making this shit up. I came nose to nose with a bull shark. And it turned 90 degrees. If my hand was out in front of me, I would have touched the bull shark. I did not get bitten by that shark, but I just picked up a half a barrel of a new beer. Well, I shouldn't say new beer. It's one of their German ales, and it's called Shark Bite. That made me think, like, you know what? I almost got bit by a shark 20 years ago. And last Thursday when we had a Zoom room for all my patrons, I got bitten by the shark. It is so good. It's only 4.3, but I'm telling you what, you can't put it down. I can't put it down. It's everything from... It's just, I love the word reliable. I mean, think about it. Arxis USA, Marshwear, Purina Pro Plan, Boss Shot Shells, Mossberg, Canine Athlete, Garmin, DU Supply, Gunner Kennels, Onyx. Reliability. We can't get that out of much else in the world, but at least the sponsors of this podcast are reliable, as are my patrons of this show. They are reliable. I love you, girls and guys, more than anybody else. I even love you more than my sponsors. And believe me, the sponsors pay more than you do to be a patron of this show. Doesn't cost you but a couple bucks to be a patron of the show. You get the Zoom rooms. You get my training with Walksy. You get the history of my dogs. You get my phone number. You need help with something. It's a great community. I don't know. I feel like I should charge more, but I can't. You know why? Because I'm reliable, and my listeners are reliable. And even if you're not a patron, you're reliable. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy this podcast. And that's all I could come up with for an intro, because after, the like I said, 10 and a half years of ad-libbing an intro. That's it. The key word is reliable.
All right, I am on a Zoom call with a fella I hadn't met until basically last night. His name is Bobby Brown. He lives in Colorado, and I was made aware of Bobby through a longtime listener of mine, Brooks Elliott, who happened to have a Bronco. And because of my background with Broncos back in the day and still owning a couple to this day, I always filter phone calls from people with whether they're looking to breed it, looking to buy it, looking for the behavior, looking to test it. And turns out that Brooks had known Bobby, and I don't want to turn it from here, Bobby, but what's the connection there to you and Brooks and how you helped him with his dog getting ready for the NA test?
Okay, so the connection is first off, hi Ron. I've also listened to you for a long time too. All the way back when your audio was terrible. So
it's still terrible. Zoom's the only reason it makes it good.
it does make it better. So Brooks actually showed up at our local chapter's first training day this spring, is how I met him.
Okay.
And I didn't really actually have a lot of chit chatting with him because we hadn't seen people since last year. So I was talking to him a little bit. Yeah. And then I ran a couple of my dogs in the field. And then I walked with a couple other people that I've been working with their dogs with. And I chatted with him a little bit. And I did watch the Bronco Boone from a little bit away. And I actually watched him in the field, and I was like, gosh, that dog's actually got a lot of go. It's not what I expected. He said, oh, he hunts. And I was like, yeah, sure. I've seen a couple of them. This isn't and then he let it go. And I was like, holy cow, that dog runs, man. Yeah. But he ran that field. I don't think he pointed a bird. I mean, he was just in takeout. He was the takeout artist. He'd smell him and run right at him. Right. And then we chatted just a little bit, and I gave him a couple tips. And I was like, maybe a check cord, maybe, keep the dog a little closer to you right now. He's still a young pup. Right. And that was it. And then I guide at a local preserve here in Parachute, which isn't very far from me. And it's called 7T Outfitters. And then he reached out to the owners of that because he knew that I had guided there. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I have to get in touch with Bobby. I have to get in touch with Bobby. So then he, through the chain, got back to me. Okay. And then I said, okay, Brooks. And I talked to him on the phone a little bit. I said, yeah, we can meet up. So then we just started meeting up a little bit with his Bronco is how that started.
Right. So you don't hang your shingle out as a full-time trainer at this point, but you've trained a lot of dogs. You worked in the dog industry. You also do human training. So I mean, the whole psychology of it. And this may be a not fair question, but I do own a minority breed, being a Bronco, so I'm going to ask it. Did you have a preconceived notion of the breed, like you're like, I don't know much about it, or did you just look at it as a dog is a dog? What was your thought when you met it?
So I had, yes, I had some preconceived notion. I'd met a couple couch potato Broncos, and that was it.
Yep.
But I'd also seen him run the field. So I was kind of like, this dog's got a lot of get up and go. He's not one of those dogs. Right. So there was a balance of, again, people will surprise you and so will dogs. Sure. So there was a little bit of a balance there. And I said, let's just kind of let him go and we'll watch and see what he did. And I will tell you, there was times I was mesmerized by that dog and I was in silence. And I told Brooks, hey, I said, no offense, I'm just watching. I haven't seen a dog work a field like this. They have a very quirky nature. Didn't mean he didn't want to do it. He just had a different way of doing it than I was used to watching.
Yeah.
But so we kind of broke the NA test down into the steps, and Brooks was very honest. He said, whatever it takes, except for, he didn't send his dog to me, which is how obviously most trainers prefer to do. It was a lot easier that way.
Sure.
But I like people, so I don't have any problem. I said, all right, then we can meet a couple times a week if you're willing to come to my training grounds and then hang out with me and we'll run your dog. So we went through the NA test, and we started with pointing because I watched the dog literally take out every bird that was in front of him.
Right.
And I said, well, let's just see if we get some less people around if he does the same thing. Oh, yeah. There was zero desire to stop before. I mean, you could see a change of behavior, but it wasn't even a pause. It was change of behavior, bird going in the air.
Yeah.
So we spent I don't know, weeks with that. All right, we got to get him back on a check cord because he always let him free run. And I said, you got to get that away from him. We got to get him back on a check cord. So I taught him how to handle the check cord and hold the dog close. And then we went through pigeon and launcher, pigeon and launcher, pigeon and launcher until the dog just finally started to stop on his own because he didn't really have another option, right? He was on a check cord, so it wasn't like he could chase across the field.
Right.
So, that's kind of the process we went through with that. And that only took, a couple weeks, once or twice a week to get that. I mean, and that dog has got a big nose. He points from a long way away.
Yeah.
You just had to, as I say, you can't teach a dog genetics. That's either got to be in there or it's not.
Right, right. Pointing is an instinct. It doesn't expire, but it doesn't also mean that it's going to be evident. A good friend of mine that I know to this day, he had a large Munsterlander, and I actually judged the dog over a decade ago, maybe 2 decades ago. And he always told me that when he re-met me, he said, "You were the nicest judge because I felt like my dog was no good. And you told me that if you got room in the truck, if you don't want to take the dog home, that you had room in the truck." And I said, "Yeah, I saw the dog's overall day, the water, the tracking. He just didn't happen to point." And that dog didn't point until he was 3 years old. Thank goodness for Brooks.
This happened a little sooner. Yeah, and I kept reiterating that. He was like, "You got to teach him how to point." I said, "I can't teach him how to point, man. I just can't do that. That is not something you can teach a dog to do."
Got to give him opportunities to keep,
Yep, and enhance his genetics, as I say. Make them come out when they're young. You just got to try to make them come out of there.
Turn this something to make that light switch come on. So, what was the water and the track? Did he feel when I talked to him? This is over a month ago, a month and a half, and he told me he had a test coming up this summer. He said, "Yeah, he's great in the water, and I've seen him track." I don't remember exactly what Brooks told me, but it's always hard as a trainer. Somebody comes to you and tells you what they've seen the dog do, right?
Yeah,
you're like, "Well, I ain't seeing it."
Yeah.
Did you guys go through all the facets of the test with him?
Yeah, we did. The one thing he kept saying is, "Well, I took him out on bluegrass when he was a little baby last year. I saw him track. And I set the scenario up and I watched him. That dog did track. I honestly, right away, I was like, this is actually a strong suit. I don't really think you need to mess with this other than to teach him the cue of what it is you want when it's saying, hey, keep your nose down. I got something right here in front of you."
Right.
And the water, he kept saying, the water was, he knew the water wasn't good. That dog would get in up to his forearms, and that was it. He wasn't going any further. I mean, there wasn't anything that dog found of any interest that was going to make him go any farther than that. Not at all. Not a live bird, not a dead bird, nothing. We threw at the next training day, because we were still working on it, I kept throwing live birds, pigeons and quail right just out of reach for him.
Right.
He would sit there and just slap the water. Just, there was zero. And then he'd run the bank. And then he'd just start barking. The dog would just bark for 5 minutes at the bird. It just wasn't going to happen.
Wow.
And he would get so close, and then everything in him would just say, back up. And he would actually just go away for it. And of course, those birds aren't supposed to be in the water anyway, so they defaulted to swimming at him eventually, and he would just wait till they came to the bank and then grab them.
Yeah. What was the turning moment for the water for that dog? Because I didn't get into the water very much when I talked to him. What was?
Oh man! So the turning point of the water was, honestly, Ron, I want to say we were at it for, God, that was a month and a half, 2 months, and we kept messing around on this water, and then finally, him and I live, I don't know, about an hour and a half apart. I said, "You got to come all the way down to me. I have great puppy water down here." Yeah. I said, "It's the best lead in. It's rocky. I mean, it is not." And then let me back up a second. Also, we tried the hype dog, taking the other dog, throwing the bumper, throwing the bird. And I've got a dog, Ringo, who will launch 15 feet into the water every time he goes into the water. I mean, he'll overjump a bumper to swim back to it. He just loves going in. So he's kind of the hype dog for the water.
Right.
Didn't work. Boone would just kind of walk away, wander off, wasn't paying any attention. He's like, "Well, that's cool. I'm glad you found a dog who will go get that for you, because I'm not going to do it." So we eventually, then I was like, stake him out next to the water. and make him watch all of this stuff. Don't let him wander off. Don't let him do anything other than watch what's going on at the water. He'd start barking like crazy, and I was like, okay, I think he's ready to go. And you'd let him go, and he'd walk in up to his forearm, up to just hit his chest, and say, no, that's as far as I'm going to go. So then I was like, I got great water. We got to try it down here. Boone loves me, and he loves birds. So we got him into the water up to our knees, and I had Brooks get in with his waders, and we were throwing kind of pitter-pattering back and forth, letting him run around in the water a little bit.
Right.
And then we actually got him excited enough to try to go out into the water, but then he did that thing that I'm assuming, I mean, it's mostly a puppy thing. This is probably the worst I've ever seen. I don't think. Anyway, it was all the way butt down feet, and there was no swimming. He was just trying to hop everywhere. And when he couldn't hop anymore, he would turn around and come back.
Yeah.
But there's some videos of that are really funny, with me in the background going, oh my gosh. And I remember at one point in this process, I told my training partner and Kayla, my fiance, I was like, this might be the first dog I can't get into water. I mean, it's all patience and it's all time. And he would get so close, but I'm really big on, it's got to be his decision. You can't make the decision for him and get him into the water. He's got to do it on his own. So what we ended up, hi Larry, finally doing is we got him excited enough down at that pond, third or fourth session, that he would go in, and then he was hopping a little bit. And I said, Brooks, you got to get out there when he gets in that far, and I need you to scoop your arm up underneath him and hold up his butt and allow him to go further into the water with you as his guide.
Yeah, or almost a life preserver of a sort of.
Yeah, it was, and I actually had a fun noodle in the truck, and I was like, if this doesn't work, we're putting a fun noodle on this dog's belly.
I'm guilty of it once too with a Bronco.
I was like, that's what I told him. I said, the confidence has got it. He's getting it now. He wants to go further, but all he's trying to do is bounce. So, he's going there. So as I told Brooks, I said, the advantage of you not setting me this dog is he's yours. So you can wear the waders and crawl into the water. Right. I'm not going any further in. Right. But yeah, so what he ended up doing was scooping him underneath here and getting his belly right here, and then walking him all the way out to the bird, and then walking him all the way back and letting him go back in. Then the next time we did the same thing, and he hooked him and walked him out there, and I said, now let him go. And then after he got the bird, he swam back to me, because I was always the reward source, with his butt a little bit higher. And then every session after that, as they say with dogs, first you walk, then you run. And after that dog, it was like just that little bit of help taught him how to keep his butt up in the air a little bit. And then now we call him Boone the duck dog, because he loves the water.
And I'm not going to pick on all Broncos, but I'll pick on most of them because I think I told you the story when we were chatting the other night. When I was involved with the Bronco Club, they wanted one of the officers of the club wanted to make a Bronco specific test. And I said, well, what do you mean? We all run in NAVDA. It's here and it's in every state practically. And the complications of designing your own test. So why would you want to do that? And she said, well, Ron, a lot of Broncos aren't good in the water. And I said, well, a lot of Broncos shouldn't be bred. And that was kind of the end of my club experience, But I did the same thing with a young guy that's a friend of my daughter's. He got a Bronco from me. Picture, like textbook, what you're talking about. Wanted to go in, but and then when he did go in, we have a very small pond in my backyard, and we had an oversized white duck, and this dog, would just run the pond, go in, come out. And when he did go in, we realized that he wasn't using his back legs either. It was all just, and at that point, they would keep knocking a bumper away forever.
Yeah, how are you ever going to get it?
Right, because you keep smacking it. And took a pool noodle and zip tied it around his waist. Like, we got to try it, And we finally saw that dog. Oh my. And a dog with such a beautiful field gait, you would think swimming would come natural to this dog. No,
No,
not
it
at
doesn't.
all.
Not at all. That was I've watched I've watched pointers, all these dogs that don't swim that well swim.
Right.
Not as bad as what I watched that. I laughed so hard when I watched that dog try to swim.
Oh. What end up to be what a success story though. I mean, he did great on his puppy test, right? I think he got a did he get a max score on it?
Max score 112, prize one for sure.
What was the pointing turnaround for him? The one thing I had told him, I didn't know he was work. I mean, certainly didn't know you. I know he mentioned he was working with somebody. I don't even think he used your name. And I said, Brooks, I said, I can't see the dog. So it's one of them things. I said, somebody would call me up and say, the judge said this and the judge said, I said, I didn't see it. You're putting me in an uncomfortable position. And I just told all I could relate to him was a dog that I had that did point early, started getting greedy, turned into a takeout artist. And, when a dog, and I know you've trained a lot of dogs, I want to get into your background, but when a dog does something and there's success, the dog basically thinks whatever a dog does, he thinks is right. You know what I mean? Even if they get up from one couch to the other, they think, yeah, that's 100% correct, right? So
The conviction they have in everything they do. That's what makes them go. There's 100%. I'm supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, and it worked yesterday, and God damn it, I'm going to remember it the rest of my life. What I had told Brooks, I said, I can't see the dog. I don't know how close he is. Your picture, what you told me early on, said like, okay, he's got a good nose. He's not one of the dogs that just kind of maybe, and then he's picking it up a long way away. So his nose is connected to his brain. I just told him, I said, I wouldn't show him another bird. And literally, I said, hope for the best, because that's what I did with a young female I had one time. It was actually a wire hair. And it was a whole different state, a whole different sight picture, different people handling the birds. And I expected to come out of there with a 0 in pointing that day. And I was like, no, I was, what
It happened.
what did you guys do for the pointing? Or did you just, what was your plan on that?
So in that scenario, for me, and this is just me, there's a million ways to do this, and that's just the way. I set it up, whether it's a pigeon or a launcher or a wild bird. I tend to go back to pigeons and launchers because I think it's the easiest way to make everything happen. And I set it up so I'm walking the dog in on a check cord. So I had Brooks walking that dog in on a much shorter check cord. I think that was part of the free will of that dog, was to just be way out in front of you. Surprisingly for Brocco, I know he was out there a good ways, and he was just having fun ripping birds because that was fun, right? Dogs either love the flush, love the retrieve, or love to point. Take your pick. They're going to love one of them more than the others, right?
Yeah, they are.
Until
they make that perfect dog. I want one. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck, man. There's one of those three that I firmly enjoy more than the other one. And I still, to this day, Boone loves to flush. That's, and I've got one that loves to flush too. So those ones are a little trickier. You have to convince them that they can't flush. But anyway, so I set them up in a crosswind situation on a check cord where the sight picture to the dog is impossible, and I've gone as far as literally putting it on the backside of a giant log or boards that are in front of it. Right. Something on that makes the sight picture impossible. You have no chance of seeing what's happening on the other side. And then I had Brooks walk in, and I'm standing there with the launcher. And whenever I see a change in behavior, meaning I see just the slightest head twitch, just anything that indicates that that dog is now aware that there is something on the other side, boom, launch, tighten on the check cord, no chase, right? Because part of the flush is the chase, right? So the dog gets the chase. So to me, you kind of negate the reward of the chase and the excitement of getting in on a bird on a flush. So now all you've got is a scent cone, and then it flies away and you don't get to do that thing that you wanted to. And I would set up 7 launchers with 7 situations where we just keep walking him through them. And each time it happens. And then with the caveat, if he actually stops to point, and Brooke has to pay attention to this, I said, if that dog ever points, I'm going to hold it for a second. I'm going to launch it, just a brief pause. And I want you to let him chase the bird.
Right. Give the dog a reward for the point. Yeah.
Exactly. The reward is, and before he was getting it without it. Now he wasn't getting it. So
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, I think it clicks a little bit faster when they start to understand that the reward, and whatever their reward is, you have to decide what it is with each dog. Some of them it's just the point, and that's easy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so then he can now correlate that behavior. And then once we established a point with the bird in the launcher, then it was still on a check cord, but now we went to quail or chucker, hidden in the same situation where I know that dog can't see it. And if he turns and goes in without a point, we've still got the check cord because he's going to bump the bird eventually, but then we can stop the process from going any further.
Right. That's kind of like tried and true. When I did a training series with my buddy Justin, he said he used the launcher for two things. For a dog that he tried over and over and over and over again, gave him every opportunity and said, I've got to create a wild flush. And then the only other time he would bring that dog back to a thing would be the next year when he was working on steadiness. Like
Yep.
he found that was the two most useful, tools for the launcher. And I'm gonna pick on my own chapter, my own friends, and my own self back in the day. We used to get a dog that we didn't even know if it had point or not, and we put the bird in the launcher before. You know what I mean? We were just like,
Yeah.
well, no, we have a launcher. We spent $250 on it.
We're
We,
going to use it.
we got to use it without even. This dog might have pointed like a champ without ever having a bird in the launcher. So, I agree 100%. The check cord 100%. Give him as many opportunities as you can, and you're like, okay, we're gonna have to. I've never heard seven in a row. That's a lot of launchers you got in stock in the back of the truck. That's
Yeah, I buy into that to the Smith 357, right? I buy
yeah.
into that odd number. I really do.
Mhm.
And I think in that situation for me, we having access to that many launchers. I only keep so many in my truck, but because we're also an outfitter, we actually use those for other things around the property. So I have access to them. The more opportunities you can give them in succession in a row to do the right thing is better rather than putting out three. Oh, well, nothing happened. Okay, spin him back and let's go reload the three again. If you can
Right.
get a lot of them out there, I think it's a big help. And
Yeah.
again, yeah, I agree with you. Launchers might be the most overused thing. And at the NAVDA training days, we ask them, do you want them in a launcher? Well, I don't know. Or sure, yeah, because they want a guaranteed contact. It's like, well, wait, why do you want it in a launcher? There's literally, if we're training a utility dog, we need it. If you have a dog who does not want a point and we need to control the outcome of this, then we need it. If it's a puppy, we don't need it.
We got to see what they'll. The funny thing about dogs chasing birds. This guy told me, he said, if you ever watched a coyote. Now, I can't speak for coyote pups under the age of 16 months, but he said if you ever watched a coyote out at night walking a fence line and, putting a stalk on a bird, and, their attempts are feeble at best, really. They do much better on mice and snakes and rabbits that
Absolutely.
they can run down, but they will certainly try to get a bird. He said, I've never seen a coyote chase a bird. You know, because it's like there was never that one mistake reward for the coyote.
Yeah.
The first time that young coyote tried to jump on a bird in a fence line or wherever it was, and the bird flew away, the coyote probably went, that didn't work. you know,
Yeah.
and
It's
and our dogs suffer from us, especially as new handlers. Like, let's try it again. Let's see if there's a different result. Let's try it again. And that chase, which that dog had, which kind of goes back, I was thinking about the water. Um, I've seen a lot of dogs that were bold in the field and funny at the water. And you'd think it would be like, oh no, it'd be just another terrain. There might be something out there. And it's funny. And it's certainly not just a Bronco thing. I've seen every breed of dog do that same walk in to the elbows and we throw bumpers and we just know we know it's going south. But his dog wasn't, I didn't want to go to it. He just didn't want to swim. Like he
yes.
didn't, yeah, he just didn't, or
The
didn't,
water was the obstacle.
right. Or didn't even, yeah, he didn't even know he could swim. Like,
Which, having watched it, he was very right to question that ability on his end. I can tell you that much. If that dog would have jumped off into a gravel pit where the water was deep, he might have drowned. I don't know.
you're gonna lose. Yeah, they can only tread water vertical so long,
Exactly.
and I can't swim for shit, so my dog would go.
Oh
But
yeah, I'm not a swimmer either. So
I that's where one of the reasons I wanted to have you on because I love that story of and I've been there myself and I've helped other people with it like that like I'm coming with a dog and like oh shit I don't know where did you get your like obviously you didn't just start doing this yesterday to help Brooks or other people. What's your backstory with dogs?
it. So I grew up in Nebraska. So I grew up. I mean, by the time I think I was 10 or 11, I was really into upland hunting. Which, oddly enough, no one in my family upland hunted, and I just went up to my mom one day and said I wanted to start hunting, and she always said, "I have no idea where that came from," but I did. So I ended up with friends who hunted. So that, and they had, Vislas, my neighbor across the street had Vislas, the guy up the street had GSPs, there's a couple springers around the corner that, and I learned to hang out with my friends and their dads who went hunting, and that kind of got me into it. And then you go to college and start working, and then all of that happens. And then I want to say it was, golly, 10 years ago now, I bought pointing lab, quotation marks, pointing lab. Right, because that's the dog everybody should have. But anyway, I bought a pointing lab, and I realized I didn't really know the best way to go forward, So I got a trainer locally, and I just kept pestering him, and I kept hanging out with him, and he found me useful. And I told you in our conversation, he to his fault did everything. Unfortunately, he did protection dogs, he did versatile dogs, he did pointing Labradors, he did labs, he did basic training with Chihuahuas and mutts around the corner because that's where he'd put himself,
Dog
I
to
guess.
heel if that's what you want. I'll teach your dog. I don't care what it is. Right.
Yeah. If you're going to pay me, I'll do anything. And he ran a doggy day camp, but I just kept pestering him, and he was incredible at reading a dog and maybe not so great at everything else. And I started learning that there was a lot of things that I didn't agree with or didn't like, but it didn't mean that I couldn't learn from that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll transition this over to me as a trainer of people. When I was in school, one of my mentors said, if you're not stealing, you're not trying. And the best of us are thieves. And what he meant was, don't ever be better than trying to steal somebody else's stuff. That's what we're all doing. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a form of flattery, but there's little pieces that you can take from everybody that are good. The worst dog trainer you've ever seen, the hardest, heaviest hand, the guy who still uses the needle nose plier on the ears, I guarantee you he has some stuff to teach you if you'll filter through the bad to find the good.
Right. That's like
so I spent a lot of time with him, and then from there, I laugh. I feel like I'm so persistent, and I won't leave people alone. There was a professional lab trainer. I've spent a lot of time with lab guys because I think they're easier to find. But I just keep pestering them. And I've built a Rolodex of some really, really big names of people that I can call and ask questions to. Just because I like to say it, like me and Mike Lardy have a text, and me and him text all the time. We send videos, and he's got a pointer and I've got a pointer, and we share that. Clint Johnson, who won the SRS, I pestered him and spent so much time with him. And there's a local retriever guy here, Bill Schaefer. I pester him, and I show up and watch him train his labs. He runs the Grand and Nationals and all that stuff. Right. So yeah.
Well, did that come from like you're also a human personal trainer?
Yep.
So did you learn that the same way? Because I mean, you can go to school. Is there a degree in personal trainer, or do you have to be like?
Yeah. So yeah, I have a degree. I went to school for that.
So there's some psychology to it, right? I mean, there's got to be psychology to it.
Yeah, I took 2 semesters of sports psychology while I was in college.
So now you go to the dogs. There's psychology with the dogs. Now you got the dog has an owner, and you gotta figure out the owner's psychology and the dog's psychology. They-
Yeah. And I think that's honestly
they-
where a lot of my skill set actually comes. I think a lot of guys who are really good with dogs aren't great with people.
Yes,
And
yes,
I think that I've learned how to be really great with dogs because they're in a way they're very they're more simple than people. There's not as many layers. They're not dishonest. They're not trying to hide anything from you. They're very honest if you'll give them the opportunity.
right.
Whereas humans, there's layers to what they want to share with you as they go through, and then you'll
Right.
finally, spend a lot of time getting to the root of the real issue. Where a dog will tell you right off, "This is my issue. I'm not confident doing that. Or you haven't fully taught me that, or I really don't want to do that." But when they really don't want to do that, there's generally a reason if they're a cooperative dog.
Right, right. That's an interesting way to look at it. You broke down. Say that again. They either don't want to do it or don't know how to do it, or I never heard anybody kind of put it in those three or four little bullet points.
Either they're not confident to do it,
Okay.
they don't know, they haven't been shown how to properly do it,
Okay.
or then you get into the and the confidence can be, that's, to me, that can be a lot of issues. There's a million things that go into the confidence of a dog, and not being shown how to properly do it. And then the last one is not wanting to do it. But if they're a cooperative dog, not wanting to do it generally falls into one of the other categories.
Gotcha. I've always, people have heard me in nausea. You said you've listened to the podcast. You must have heard me use the word cooperation a lot,
Uh-huh.
right? And when I have a cooperative dog, it's usually not going to be a high scoring dog, but I can work with that dog because there's still that like I kind of it's like Father Flanagan. Well, that's an you're not maybe not even old enough to remember that movie with Spencer Tracy. That's an old,
I'm going to say no on that one, Ron. We won't go into age, but I'm going to say no on that one.
okay. Anyway, he said there's no such thing as a bad boy, and he had a home for bad boys, right? And kind of like I won't say there's no such thing as a bad dog, but I think all of them fall into those categories you're talking about. They don't know, they didn't get shown, but if that cooperation's there, as long as they, like you said, didn't grow up in the mean streets of a junkyard, and you're trying to turn a Doberman Pinscher into a service dog, you've got something to work with the cooperation and the dog.
You do it, and as long as that is there, and there are, I mean, and to say that, there are some bad dogs, right? That's just the way it is.
Yeah,
We've gotten them a lot. We've gotten them a lot better. I mean, that's thanks to like NAVDA and NASRA, all these organizations. They have gotten a lot better, but there are some bad dogs. But I generally feel like when you get into that non-cooperative mode in a cooperative dog, either A, your way of teaching didn't sink in, or B, you need to go back and look at how you were teaching them, because not all dogs are like people. They all don't learn the same way. When I was in college, they taught you, we use cues to teach people how to do things. There's your verbal, there's nonverbal, there's physical touch, there's the mirror. What is it that you have to use? Dogs are, I mean, it's the same concept. You have to go through, I say dogs have a love language. They do. And you have to figure out each dog, which one it is.
Right.
And each one has a better way of learning. And you have to decide what it is that works for them to learn. Just,
Right.
Like me, my mom always said you have to learn everything the hard way. I learned best by a solid slap in the head, however it came across, whether it was some other way or not. And there are some dogs that learn that way. I mean, it's a pressure game, and they're okay with that because that's the mode that works for them, And there's other dogs that you really have to break it down and simplify it and give them the confidence to go through baby step, baby step, baby step.
Yeah. And that goes back. I've always told people that dogs, I don't know where the age break in the child would be, but there's so many similarities between children and dogs. When it comes to that early confidence, like my grandson a year ago. Now, this is not, I would say, not normal for a 4-year-old kid, right? A 4-year-old boy. He did not want to go on the side by side. Like we have a Kawasaki mule. Now, every other kid, can I have a ride? Can I have a ride?
I had to get on that thing.
He said no. Once he said no, it was no, right? He was playing with another guy's friend that was over here for a party, and he'd been playing with this kid for, I don't know, 2 hours straight. They've been having a ball. And I pull out the mule, and Aiden's dad has a four-wheeler. Aiden comes running up onto the mule. Let's go. And off we took. My next loop back into the backyard, my grandson, who acted like the dog that couldn't swim, jumps on the mule and says, "Let's go." You know? So there, I don't know where it cuts off. Probably for me, it was 13, but probably around 7 or 8. The puppies have all them little markers, and it's just learning to wait for them and learning to read them. But I go back to the uncooperative dogs. To me, those are kind of the ones you could do. I don't want to say the old 2x4, but you could do it with negative pressure, and a dog would be like the kid that went to Catholic school. The nun wrapped his knuckles and was like, "Okay, I'm good. I ain't doing it again." Right?
Not worth it. Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So there are those dogs that you could just give them a harsh correction and actually gain something from, but that's probably less than 50%, I'm going to guess, you know.
In my experience, very humble experience, I agree with you. It is there, and those are fewer and far between. They're nice when you get them, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they are nice when you get them.
And they're good performance dogs.
Yeah, they're pretty. You know, their communication isn't complicated or complex. It's just a little bump. Nope, bump. Okay, all right, got to where I want to go.
All I had to do was go to Catholic summer school one time, and I was good to go. I want to get into some other things, though. You mentioned in the text back to me, and you said it was in Craig Koschek's book, Wessel Pointers. I don't have Craig's book. I lent it to a friend. We're going to do some more collaboration on another podcast. I don't remember the Wessel Pointer. What is a Wessel Pointer? Or am I saying it wrong?
No, you got it right. You got a Wessel Pointer. And I point that out because people always laugh. They're like, "I can't believe you have those dogs." They're from a gentleman in Idaho. His name is Bill Wessel, so he named him after himself, which is fine. Dobermans, but they're LHU Pointers. There are plenty of people who name dogs after themselves.
Right.
But his reason for starting them was he loved short hairs, but they couldn't withstand North Dakota. And he loved to hunt North Dakota, and he loved to hunt North Dakota late in the season. That was his thing. He loved doing it. And he loved the high tail of a pointer, the LHU 12 o'clock tail.
Okay, now I see where we're going. Okay.
So he said, you know, as he told me, I've actually talked to him a lot. He's a very nice guy. Form follows function. And he wanted to create a dog that pointed with a 12 o'clock tail that came with a lab coat. Your 3 lab coat varieties: black, yellow, brown.
Wow.
And I will say, to his credit, with a lot of conversations, I was like, okay, I'll try. I'll give it a whirl. I'll see what you got. And anybody who's seen those dogs loves those dogs. They are, Larry, my oldest one, for out of the box hunting dog. And I mean, just an out of the box, easiest thing in the world to deal with, about as close as you're going to come. I shot my first bird over him 4.5 or 5 months old. That dog ran out, picked it up, and brought it back to me. And the look on his face was, "I have no idea why I'm doing this, but I think you want this." And that was, I mean, and the other one I got's the same way. Loves to retrieve, loves the water, and they point it's a pretty point. It's a very beautiful point.
What do they look like, Bobby?
I
mean, in general.
They look like a short hair with a lab coat.
Okay. With an undocked tail, though, a long tail.
Dock tail. He docks them.
Oh, he docks them. Okay. All right.
Yes, he docks them, takes the dew claws off.
Gotcha.
And, you know, and I know that, you know, people say a lot of things, and I just, you know, I also was around guys who coon hunted a lot in Nebraska when I was a kid. I understand just that one's good. Who cares what the papers say? We're going to make a better dog. What he puts out now, there's a standard, there's a size. They look the same. They act very similar. I mean, I think he said he's like 8 or 9 generations in at this point.
Wow. I gotta, now you got me curious.
Yeah. You know, I will say, you know, the downside is you can't run the games with them except for the, that
Federation.
test that Funky does.
Yeah. Federation. You could
Yeah.
run
The Federation. And I was gonna, and I have the 2.5-year-old, I keep threatening to actually go test him because he would test out really well.
Yeah.
But and Larry, the older one too. That I also laugh. That's the first dog that I ever saw who does a duck search naturally. If you take him to a body of water, he jumps in and he will swim the outside, just looking for stuff.
Just like a dog would course the field looking for something without your help. Yeah.
Exactly. He just all in.
Almost
And yeah, so
a self hunter in the water.
self hunter in the water. Absolutely. If you take him to the water, he's in and he's going to go search cattails. He's going to go try to find anything out there.
That's crazy. Well, what else is in your dog lineup or do you?
I've got a poodle pointer, Magic.
Okay.
He's 3 years, 8 months or so. That dog that's an incredible animal. I would tell you that. Sometimes you get to be around a special animal. That dog at 19 months got a prize one UT. Went to the invitational at golly, he was under 3 when he went to the invitational last year. And then just this last weekend, sorry, I'll go on a rabbit trail here. Just this last weekend, we had our NAVDA local chapter test, and we had an apprentice judge who's a friend of mine who was in town, and he needs his UT dogs really bad. He really needs them. And we had a last minute, like 10 o'clock at night on a Friday, cancel, said, I can't make it tomorrow. And I said, Kyle, how bad do you need this dog? He goes, if every dog shows up for you in the next test, I get my dogs for the year.
Right.
And I said, so if we are short one, he goes, then I have no chance of making it. So I said, all right, I have not trained Magic for the UT in 2 years, but I will run him. And I ran him on Saturday, and he got another prize one with absolutely zero practice for that test.
That's a cooperative dog with a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And
the most obedient animal I've ever owned.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I also have an English pointer.
Okay. Just for the style. Just for
the God, they're fun to watch, man. Gosh, and that dog, my fiance just NA tested him. He got a 112 max score.
So what was the water like for him? Because that's obviously not a strong suit of that breed, but can be.
1,000 times easier than Boone. I can tell you that much. Like
all you had to do was show him the bird in the water, and he's like, okay.
So at 5 months, I think it was 5 months. He may have been 6 months old. He was swimming for bumpers. He loves bumpers. That dog has as much prey drive as any animal I've ever seen, and a bumper works for him for that. I mean, I didn't even have to ever use a bird in the water for him.
Wow.
He watched my other dogs for a couple sessions, kind of dinked around, went in a little bit. And then one day he was just like, nope, I'm going. And I remember texting Caleb, I just saw your pointer swim.
He got a case of FOMO, fear of being left out. Right?
He just couldn't. He was on the bank and he just couldn't take it. All the other dogs were swimming and chasing bumpers and he just couldn't take it. And he finally went in.
And he used all 4 of his legs.
and he did. Yeah, actually, he swam as good as Magic, my pointer, my poodle pointer did when he was a pup.
That's crazy. So.
And then I have I have 4 other dogs in the house, right? I'm not in the house, but with me right now for training.
So you're still full-time person trainer?
Yeah. If you call it,
or not,
6
whatever.
hours a day, but no lunches, no breaks. So,
Hey, your corporate person in a cubicle probably only works 5. So come on.
To be fair, I set my own schedule, but yes, that's still my day job. I start, I got to be there at 5 a.m. and then I'm normally off by 11.
Right. That's not a bad day. And
no.
So do you hang your shingle out locally for the chapter and word of mouth? What's your plans there?
Through the outfitter is definitely one of my referral sources because 2 of the dogs I have out there came through the outfitter because I'm a guide there. Mm-hmm. And then through the chapter is where I've made where I've received a lot of my other clients. Right. And, on our phone call, I said, we actually just moved out of town and I got 40 acres and I'm actually working on building my kennel out now so I can actually have some more dogs on site.
And you like it that much, because you said something early on. Not all good dog trainers are good people, and that is 100% true. I've had enough of them to know, like, boy, you couldn't make it on a construction site going to the bar with everybody later. You're in a different. you're not in the people world. You are only in the dog world, Um, that's exciting. But you mentioned also that you guide in Wyoming. Uh,
Yep. So I'm
that's
actually
something
heading
you
up
do
there
that-
this weekend. We're doing. I have four or three sage grouse hunts booked up there through an outfitter up there.
Gotcha.
Uh, and yeah, so I go up to Wyoming and then we'll guide the opening weekend, the second weekend, and then the third hunt is the Thursday, Friday before that. He does 2-day hunts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got to do that a couple times. That's other than I was oblivious to the fact that there could be snakes out, which if I'd have known that, I probably would have not got out of the truck. Not that I'm afraid of snakes in general. I'm just afraid of rattlesnakes. So, um, but yeah, I did 2 trips out that way and enjoyed the heck out of it. It was a lot of walking for a little bit of bird contact, but then when it was the walk was worth it. The walk was worth it.
It is. And sage grouse are one of my favorite birds to hunt. And I'll start running both mine and my clients' dogs on sage grouse starting this weekend because I'll start running them all August. I think they are about as fair as you get with a dog as they come. If your dog pressures, the whole thing's gone.
Right.
If they're fair, boy, those suckers will hold for you. They'll sit there and wait for you. I've seen wild sage grouse, 8 feet off a dog's nose. As long as the dog's not out of control, they're fair.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely a different kind of bird. It's no rooster pheasants. That's for damn sure.
No,
No.
no. And that's a bird. I grew up in Nebraska. We went to North Dakota last year, and I told my buddy who I was with, I said, "Look, if I don't hunt another pheasant, I don't think I would be that upset."
And I cut my teeth on them, and I love them. So they're more like a grudge bird for me. Like when I do get one handled, I have I have learned from my like I have learned from my good friends now that I've made in the last few years that hunt with labs and springers. Like
Uh-huh.
that is the right dog to hunt pheasants with if you want to be a pheasant hunter. I,
I
I
tell
know
people,
I know you can do it with every other breed and it can work and blah blah blah. But if you want to put a bird up, you get a flushing dog to get them bird. They'll get them birds up. And
no doubt about it. If you want to hunt wild pheasant, it's flushing dog country for sure. And you can run on them. And on the preserve that I guide on, we run, a nicer boutique where we release the birds and all of that stuff.
oh
And
yeah,
those birds are different. But
yeah,
the way we hunt them down there is very much like wild. They have really beautiful, thick briars, and I feel like there's times I'm like, man, I am back in Nebraska, and this is not where I want to be with my dogs crawling through plum thickets right now. But
do you get back to Nebraska at all?
yeah, so last year we went back on the way to the Invitational, and stopped in western Nebraska, hunted sharktail, and then the year before that I went back and hunted some pheasant in western Nebraska.
Gotcha. Still got a few connections there, or is that family connections all gone?
Family, where I grew up in eastern Nebraska, the pheasants are all but gone there. You
Yeah.
got to go down that central corridor, and it's not family connections through there for me.
Yeah. I hunted the Nebraska, I think it was Nebraska State Forest, they call it for sharptails once.
Uh-huh. Halsey is the Halsey National Forest is probably what it was, or
Yeah, like one end of it really freaked me out because it was full of pine trees. And
oh
then
yeah.
then I got into the sand hills and then I was like, I am only going to do this once. Between the dog booths we went through and the hills I had to climb, trying to hunt from windmill to windmill for water, I was not it was a hunt I squeezed in and I was ill prepared for it, but we did manage to put a couple wings in the barrel. So it was
Yeah.
fun.
And that's actually the same place we hunted last year.
Was it? Yeah, that's a big spot. I remember going over that in a plane one time, and there's not a lot of stuff you can see from a plane, but you can actually see the undulation of the sandhills from a plane. It's
They are steep.
and there are enough of them to where you're like, are my eyes blurry? No, I am looking down at this roll.
Sand waves.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty cool. Um, so if people want to get a hold of you, are you? I don't want to push this out, but you had mentioned that now that you moved out, building kennels, are you looking to expand a little bit or just keep, keep it on the down low, which may not happen now after we do this recording. So,
Yeah, we might. No, I am absolutely trying to expand a little bit. I've been in it, like I said, I told you on that phone call, there's a threshold which you cross at one point where you're willing to take someone's money to help train their dog or to just take their dog from them. And I did that years ago. And a big part of moving out here was to create more space because I was having a lot of people who were asking me I was turning people away who were asking, do you have space for a dog? And I was like, I don't, I'm full right now.
yeah.
I still want to keep it not, I wouldn't say smaller, but I have a different style that I kind of explain to people. The dogs who are here spend time in my house with me. I rotate them through the house a little bit. So I feel like a lot of people feel like when they send their dog off to a trainer, he gets stuck in a kennel and he comes out for a little bit every day and he gets a little bit of work and then he goes back in the kennel, which isn't an unfair thing.
That's the way most people have to do it. They just, yeah.
There's really not another way to do it. And, this has been a lifestyle of mine for so many years now. Like you said, do you love it that much? I said, I actually do. I love working with the people as much as I like the dogs. I actually enjoy both aspects of it. The dogs are more what drives it, but I enjoy trying to help people understand what their dog's maybe trying to tell them or where the hiccup is, or if nothing else, just sharing knowledge with them. So, I have a client who have a dog right now. And I said, look, I'm going to tell you this because you're never going to have, because you're young enough, you're going to have more dogs. Don't do it this way again. He got some advice from a friend that said, if you're sending him to a trainer, don't do anything with him. And I've got a 14-month-old dog that knows nothing at all whatsoever. And I said, okay, so here's the deal.
That's bad advice. No puppy walks, no water exposure.
Nothing. He knew his kennel and their little ranch, and that was it. And all their ranch was playing fetch with a stick occasionally, So I've got no bird drive. I've got no confidence to leave my side. I've got a lot of anyway. So I said, I'm going to tell you this because I said, and that's one of the things that I have is a puppy program where the cost isn't very high, but we'll get oriented. I'm going to actually give you a list of stuff that I want you to do with this dog so it comes to me better. And if in that process you learn you want to do it yourself, go right ahead. I'm more than willing to help you. But because there's a good bond that happens with the dog there, because I still know that when you get to force fetch or things like that, you're probably going to want my help. And I'll take a dog to just do a force fetch. I do that a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm building a world where the dogs, I take them on, I call them group walks, where we just go out and walk. And I was telling you, I have wild birds actually on the property. And then in the spring, we're going to have a Johnny house. So I can take the dogs out and walk, and they're going to have bird contacts. But more than anything, they get to just be a dog. And then there's still the in the house human contact where they're a part of the life and they get to hang out. They lay on a dog bed. They're here. And then during the day, they have time where I'm sorry, I've said it a couple times. I'm just big on a dog being a dog. So you have free time in the afternoon where I'm not giving you any structure, play around, dig a hole in the yard if you want to, because there's a big fenced in yards. Go ahead, dig a hole for a little while if that makes you happy. I don't care,
Yeah. I feel the same way. I've never put a shingle out, and I've never even brought a person's dog over here. I've helped them at the chapter level, but I'm a big proponent of these dogs have enough inherent instincts. We shouldn't, unless you want to go to a high level test, it's really not hard to just have a hunting companion, right? You bring it out in him. If he's cooperative, there's really not that much to it, but you got to know what the not much is. There's like this guy that gave you a dog. He's like, oh yeah, they said don't do anything with it so you don't screw it. No, I didn't mean. That's like sending a kid to high school and saying, oh, you know what? I always heard grade school was a waste of time. We're going to throw you in high school.
First can start you in high school. Yeah. And him and I had that conversation, and he was like, well, he comes from great bloodlines. And I was like, he does. I said, but your daughter may be, in fact, a fantastic soccer player. But if you don't show her soccer till she's 16, nobody's going to ever know.
No one's ever going to know. You must have a good, you mentioned your fiance and the plan with these dogs. You must have a dog loving fiance, because bringing other people's dogs in the house on a regular routine, you got to have another dog nut. Like that would be in my house. I could tell my wife that somebody wants to come over here and pay me X amount of dollars, but it needs to come in the house at night. And she's like, nope. Nope. So I hope, I hope, did you go over all this with her?
Kayla, my fiance is the saint, and I will just say it that way. And there's a reason why we are getting married. She does love dogs, but I think as much as she loves the dogs, she tolerates me and all of my nonsense, which I am a lot of nonsense. That is how I operate.
Yeah.
And the funny story with her actually is she was raised a vegetarian, and she now when I met her, she did eat meat, but she had never hunted. I mean, she bought her first gun with me 4 years ago. She'd never hunted, and since then she shot an elk, and she owns two of her own hunting. Two of the four that I own are technically hers. And she now owns two shotguns, a bow. She has a javelina tag down in New Mexico next year because we go down to New Mexico and hunt quail. And she was like, "I want to shoot a javelina," so we got our javelina tag this year. She I will she's open to a lot of stuff, and I think that she has found something that she had just never been exposed to that is very rewarding for her. And she loves working with the dogs. And I tell her all the time, I said, it's a big help because these guys, it's not just guys who are my customers. Sometimes it's women.
Oh, sure.
And,
Sure.
you know, when she's out there doing the basic obedience stuff and working on them the same way that I do, they adapt to two different people. They're not just, you know, the male's not always going to be the one who gets across to the dog.
Right, right. Have you come up with a name for this operation yet?
Yeah, we call it Wild West Bird Dogs.
Wild West Bird Dogs. All
Yep.
right. Website to come someday or already started?
So we do Instagram and Facebook. I think she can hear me. Kayla, can you hear me? Do we have anything other than Instagram? No, we just do it on Instagram right now.
So if
I think
anybody's-
I do foresee that we'll have a website up and running by next spring.
Yeah, I know you told me when we started before we hit record, you're not really good on technical stuff, computer stuff. And I said, I'm older than you and I'm even better and I'm not good. But I'm telling you what, with AI and one person, they will have a website built for you in 2 hours. It could be a one-page landing page, but you know, I would say you should definitely do that. But I mean, Instagram is the way to go. So while we're
Yeah, and actually, Kayla just hollered at me from upstairs. I guess Brooks with the Bronco said he would help build me a website. So
deal.
I do dogs and people, Ron. I'm not. That's why I'm defaulting to her to ask her. I was like, "What do we have?" I don't know where these people keep coming from.
And where's the salt and pepper? I don't know, honey. I can't find it. So you
Yeah.
got a vegetarian raised fiance, and now she outshoots you, and she's
Yes.
coming with new adventures. Sounds like you got, I don't want to say perfect, but boy, if looking at you on the screen, knowing that you're engaged, I know you're younger than me. If her mother wasn't the one that made her a vegetarian, I'd ask you for her mother's number.
Unfortunately, her mother is the one who raised her a vegetarian.
Damn it. It's off. It's off the table then.
Yeah. There
In
are
my
no
life-
perfect dogs and there are no perfect people, but she's about as close as they come for me anyway.
That's cool. Well, Bobby, I knew when we talked the other day, you said, "Oh, I don't know what I said, you're a talker. You're a guy that I would go out of my way to come by and talk for hours on end. You love dogs, you love the whole game, and you've played with enough of it too to be, you know, quite successful already."
Yeah. Thank you. I feel like I feel like I spent enough time doing stuff for free that I learned the right way because it was
Right.
just out of pure enjoyment of doing it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it sounds great. So Wild West Bird Dogs.
Yep.
All right. So on Instagram, that's the same thing. No underscores, nothing like that.
Is there any underscores, Kayla?
Kayla.
On Instagram, is it just Wild West Bird Dogs? Yeah, that's it. No underscores or anything like that.
All right. So they'll just message you and then Kayla will get the message and she'll tell you who's looking for you.
Exactly. Yes. And we're in Debet, Colorado, out here on the western slope.
Debet. I don't know that. Was that what it was?
Debet.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, tell.
Yeah, it's DBQ is how you say it. But anyway.
I would imagine your phone's going to be ringing a little bit more, and keep in touch. I love the story of kind of that one dog's journey, but then I like to stay. You know, I like your journey. I mean, I'd never heard of a Wessel Pointer, and when I get that book back, I'm gonna look it up, and I'm gonna look that guy up. My wire-haired Vizsla. Now that's not a new breed, but it's one of the younger breeds out there. You know,
Yeah.
they took a perfectly good Draghar and a perfectly good Vizsla and started, you know, and
We've had a
everybody,
couple in the chapter, and I'm like, well, I don't, I guess if that, I suppose it seemed like the dogs that they used were just fine.
right, right. It seemed like Vizslas were pretty good. Hey, and so were wire hairs. Okay, well, what are you going to do? But all right, Bobby, it's been a pleasure. I'll let you get on with your night and tell Kayla thanks for being on standby there. So I'm glad she didn't have to jump in and fix anything, but audio or video, you managed to get through that.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, and thanks to Brooks for introducing us.
Yeah, absolutely. Small world in the dog world, isn't it?
Yep. Here's to you, Brooks and Boone. See ya.
See ya.